We do the quarter-by-quarter breakdown. We do the votes. I think it's fair to say it's better when it's a thriller. And it's over by halftime. David King, hello.
Hello, G. Yeah, it didn't really deliver what we'd hoped, did it? But it did if you're a Brisbane Lions fan. So congratulations to all those people with probably a hangover that they're dealing with on a Monday morning. But it was just a performance, wasn't it? I mean, that's what it's all about at this stage of the year, just being able to perform under the bright lights, and boy, did they do that.
Give us the King's Gambit.
I think there's no other way you can go but to talk about Chris Fagan, and he's dispelled so many myths across this period, really. And this flag it's a different flag. It feels like a different flag to me. And I don't know where you sit. I didn't catch the very start of your show, unfortunately, but history's told us it's almost impossible to win a premiership outside the top four. So when you start 0-3, you start to think, okay, we're giving some concession to 4, 5, 6 other teams that are going to probably fill those areas. And your 2 wins and 5 losses at round 8, you start thinking, okay, there's trouble here. They still had some technical issues in terms of coughing up some leads, whether that be early in the season or later in the season. The tactical discussion has always been strong. Are they tactically at the pointy end? But it hasn't seemed to matter. The trust model has taken over, which is different. We've seen the HHH model at Richmond, which has been, but Richmond are very tactical in how they play. I mean, you can sit here and say this is what they do and this is how they achieve success. So to be able to correct the 2-minute drills looked like it was a problem. Outside looking in, wasn't required on the weekend. The 2-minute drill was the start of the game, pretty much. The 44-point and 25-point comebacks in the semi and prelim, when they had to embrace a totally different brand. So they've always been a very good control team, and we'll talk about how they did it on the weekend. But to embrace chaos and to play just that random brand of football is it's not often you can achieve that. And we always talk about it being small margins and. Gee, 44 points down, 1 more goal, it's all over. And they've won a grand final by 10 goals. I mean, you're not going to get a smaller margin season like this going forward. But the clinical dismembering in this biggest game of the year was unlike no other. And you have to say congratulations to all involved, and particularly the coach who's had an incredibly tough year when you look at the racism allegations that really were quite damaging and took a heavy toll on Chris at the start of the season. We didn't help him through the middle of the year, or I didn't help him through the middle of the year with probably the coaching discussion. But that's just all part of this gig. This is what we do when we review games. I just think that when you watch this game on the weekend, and I know they're stacked with talent, but I'm trying to look for what it is. What's his stamp? What's the one thing you could say? This is Fagan football. You know, we talk about the cluster for Clarko and the handball run and gun game for the Tigers, and Geelong have done it a bit differently with their aggressive ball movement after being a safe team for 6-7 years, and they changed totally the blank canvas approach, and they went and stripped it all back. And I guess it comes back to me that control and probing to try and just test for weak spots. So the chip across towards the corridor, it's only 15 metres, but are they all able to go and slide and cover, ready for us to explode? I guess the probing ball use for the Lions is his strength, is his design to test the defensive integrity of the other team, which just paid dividends in spades on Saturday. Now, you can argue, is that the new wave of football? With the stand rule, has this just taken over our game? Is this going to be the way we look at football going forward? Bit of a skill fest. But deep down, this group, I think, always had a flag in them, given the quality. And we've talked a lot about what they've actually got. But I wasn't convinced it was going to be under the rebuild coach. And I've always said the rebuild coach gets you to a point, but he doesn't really survive. He's never there at the end. Well, he joins that group, doesn't he? He joins the Hardwicks, the Clarksons, that have taken the team from the absolute ground level to a premiership. I heard him talking on the weekend, and there are dozens of ways to win a game of footy, but there's not a dozen ways to win a premiership. In the end, it's about performing with your group in your brand or your method on the biggest days, and they've done that. And in a lot of ways, trust has trumped tactics. The way he's backed this group time and time again. And I heard him say on the weekend that he's not the perfect coach. He said, I am not the perfect coach, but I'll tell you what, I'd rather be a premiership coach than the perfect coach, Gerard.
It is worth having a look at their final series in its totality. So we've always held the Bulldogs' final series of 16 is go over to the West, beat the Eagles, come back, knock off the defending champions, finish their era at the MCG when they beat Hawthorn, go to Sydney and beat the Giants in one of the greatest preliminary finals of all, and then win the grand final. So their final series, again, go the long way. They held Carlton scoreless for an hour, which was a bit mesmerising. They come from 44 points down against the Giants, and they looked gone in that semi-final. They come from 25 points behind Geelong, but they come from behind Geelong with 2:40 to go. So they're behind when the 2-minute drill hits, and they win, and then they win the grand final in the first half. Like this is all time, this collection of 4 games that they've put together.
Yeah, look, you need your slice of luck, right? You need your slice of luck. Joe kicking those 2 goals from Joe's, as the boys have said.
Toby Bedford claims the advantage, and
the 50-50, set shots. Hogan kicks one more. We're talking about a blown opportunity. We're talking about why didn't you make the change? Why didn't you put Andrews instead of Payne on him for the last 30 minutes of footy? So all those things, all those just go off the table. It doesn't matter anymore. And now the conversation, you pick up the paper today, and they're going to get better. And you go, well, this is the nature of the beast, isn't it? We will talk like that now about the Brisbane Lions. They are the premiership team of 2024, and it doesn't matter how they got there or how they did it and how much they won by. There are tattoos going everywhere, Gerard, and the rest does not matter.
The debate for New Vision Clinics, keyhole laser vision, next generation technology. It's to answer Zoe's question is, what happened with Sydney? So we'll do the mechanics of it, but just give me, so the overall, that's 2 in 3 years. And, John Longmire's living the Malcolm Blight experience now of a set of grand final losses in a row. But the 2 in 3 years with essentially the same group and all the scarring associated.
So if you had to just lay blame at one facet of the game, their star-studded mids refused to defend. They just refused. Now, is this a one-off? I think it's a one-off, but, gee, it's a bad time to bring out a one-off. Whether they over-invested in trying to negate Brisbane's short passing and were too aggressive, too high, and were pierced too regularly and out the back too often, or did you just choose to take the easy option? And there'll be a number of instances we'll step through later that'll highlight their top liners: Goulden, Warner, Heaney, McInerney, Papley. And the review would be awful today. And they've got to have it. They've got. This is one of those ones that you actually have to sit down and go through because it's so stark. And I don't think that's them. But then you start thinking, okay, what are the best defensive highlights for the Swans this year? You start thinking, have they been there? Blakey's been up and down. His stinkers cost goals. Could have had 6 kicked on him on the weekend. I don't know the exact number in the end, but it's north of 4. So those type of opportunities and flaws, they rattle players around them. They rattled McCartan. They rattled Rampy. Rampy looked like he was trying to cover for everyone. So I think it just comes down to their star factor players. You can blame the others, and we can talk about the forwards that are not the household names. We can talk about the guys that are role players, but it really isn't them. If your top 4 or 5 players don't fire, you don't win big games. Don't give me the bottom 6 discussion. It's the top 4 or 5. And maybe Sydney don't have an absolute prime top 6, but they've got an absolute prime top 3 or 4. And those guys didn't fire, and they allowed too many luxuries to the opposition, and they were made to look average.
What about the overall? So they are a rarity now with 3 tall forwards, and the way that they play there is... So it feels like you can't just absorb this one. There's got to be some measure of reckoning in this at every level. Like John Longmire, if they win one, we'll find out what his private moments are like. And if they don't win one with this group, then we never will. But I'd love to know what his private moments are like at the moment.
Yeah. It's a hard question to answer because what did Brisbane do last off-season?
But they played incredibly well in the grand final, whereas Sydney have had 2 shockers at their last 2 appearances. That for me is the difference. That for me is the difference. It's if you go out and perform and you get beaten, that's okay. Okay, what did we learn from it? What would we improve? If you go out twice and are spooked, right, what's at the core of that? And will that correct next time around, or do you is there a reckoning?
Well, you never know, do you?
No, you don't.
You're like, this is just the hardest part about winning a premiership is getting to the grand final. You've got to beat 16 other teams to get there.
And yet that's not their reality anymore.
Well,
they live this incredible burden if they remain a successful team. Nothing will matter until they get back there now. And as you said, that's such a hard journey to live because it's so difficult to get there.
Yeah.
That's what I find most fascinating about them now.
Yeah, and you're talking probably the collective. I'm talking the individual. The one who puts his head on the pillow at night and says, what happened today? I am a better player than that. And I made this decision, gee whiz, and I made why did I make this decision? Why did I make that decision? Because it's funny, you're never comfortable as an athlete, as a performer, as a whatever. You're always nervous of this sort of in the back of your mind. They've got that a couple of times now as individuals. I don't know what that does in terms of scarring. I can't answer that, but I think the only way to approach this is the way that Chris Scott did a few years ago with the blank canvas approach. Is it the way we play? Is it us? Is it us, the coaching staff, setting you up the wrong way? Is it you? Are you the problem not handling these moments? Is it a combination of things? Are we fit enough? What are we doing? So the blank canvas, just take all the magnets off the board, take all the game plan down, sit down, build the whole thing new. Worked for Geelong, and they started playing a totally different brand of footy. Maybe that's it. But I've got no doubt John Long might be sitting back today saying, is this me? Like this last hump, we can't get over that last speed hump, What is it? And there's no easy answer, and there's no obvious answer. This is why these guys are in these positions, Jared.
Yeah. So for me, it changes whatever the Swans do next year. It's not about PFI for them. It's about GFI. They can have preliminary final integrity all year, but they now get measured on grand final integrity. It's an impossible bar, but this is the lot that they have now earned for themselves.
Well, I think you've just got to put on the table that we're not here to judge any injured players. They're all the same player. We we concede. If you're out there, you're up for discussion. So I don't care whether you're carrying something, and if you've got an injection or you're able to cope or you're not. You're just on the table. I thought when you look at the ability to the ball movement battle, the ability to move the ball, Brisbane were able to do it so effectively, but in different ways. So in the first quarter, they kicked 3-3 from D half. Now that's a fantastic start because they were able to do it when it had to be slow. So I just want to put some time codes to it. So if you're watching the game back on review, you can do it yourself. So the long down the lines, they're the hardest. That's the slowest, easiest thing to defend in the game. Force them skinny side where your numbers are. Usually your intercept markers, and if they beat you, well, you're in real strife. 16:35, they go 3 contested marks in a row. Dunkley, Hipwood, and then Danaher inside 50, and you go, wow. They do the same thing again at 5:49. Kept skinny side. Contested Mark Morris, contested Mark Archie, contested Mark Danaher. And you go, well, they can't stop them when it's slow. Well, there's real trouble here. And then when they can change gears. And I guess this is what I'm going to embed in my own mind is the Chris Fagan stamp being corridor probing. Those 15, 20-metre passes around the point of centre half back where at any stage they can explode through and deep inside 50 if they can hit one target or get one Campbell receive, given the luxuries of the stand rule. So when the Swans could change gears, when the Lions could change gears, it forced the Swans to absolutely defend every player and a fair portion of the ground, including the corridor. So the play of the day is at 9:35, where Leicester takes a mark in the defensive 50, and then he surge runs. Now, Papley goes with him for the first 10 strides, and if you pause at 9:35 odd, you can see him point to Fox. He's yours now. And he drops into they were all really shallow, and they're only defending that 20 to 25 metre pass. So they were really high, really aggressive. He hands to Fox, Fox hands to McInerney, and no one actually did the job. There was 3 handovers that never got done. McInerney really wasn't interested in defensively covering. Near enough's good enough. He's out the back. They hit that one kick of Leicester, who's run 70 metres. He's challenged them.
Yep.
So that's the bit that I really like, is that Leicester, again, through this final series, is the player that says, let's take a risk. He takes the mark, and as soon as he lifts his eyes, it's 6v3 in favour of Brisbane forward. Joe's in the goal square by himself.
It's incredible.
It's amazing, wasn't it? So it was a very easy play from just probing with the ball, testing whether they were defensively there. And as soon as you saw that, you thought, oh, this threatens to get ugly.
Yeah. So it's the lead up to the first Lohmann goal. And if you watch nothing else today, go back and watch that clip on KO. And it's frighteningly clear what's going on.
And it's Leicester again.
Yeah.
So he won't come up in any more votes, but he could have been in most of them, Gerard, or all 4 quarters. So Brisbane had the ability, and this is probably where we've got to adjust our thinking about footy now and this uncontested mark game. And I don't love it, to be fair. But Brisbane had the ability to take the game out of pressure once they'd won the initial possession, whether they won it back or they won it at contest. 46 marks was the most that they'd taken in any first quarter for the season. It was their 4th highest individual quarter for the year in a grand final. In the first quarter of a grand final, they're out of play without allowing the opposition to threaten them. So the Swans' pressure rating was 157. They've only had 4 or 5 poorer quarters for the year. So Brisbane totally playing the way they want to play. The scoreboard was such a lie. It was just way out of whack, way out of kilter with what the actual game was telling us. So that was the ball movement challenge. There are other challenges. So the Swans lacked composure. You could see them blasting the ball inside 50.
So there's 3 moments. They just kept kicking the ball to the cluster of players at the top of the square, which is exactly what they got Port Adelaide to do the week before. And you go, really? And then the 2 moments where Warner on his 2-bounce run, and he kicks it straight to Harris Andrews. You go, mate. And then Jordan had Parker wide open and he missed him. So the 2 moments they had where they got the separation that they were looking for, they blew them so badly.
Well, pause it. Pause it at 450. It's exactly 450. And Jordan has Parker open to the left, just off Andrews. But Andrews, he's played this situation 1,000 times. He's teasing distance off. If you want to kick it to him, I'm prepared to concede that if you mark it. You're 45 from goal. You're a 30% chance from there, the game tells us. But if you don't quite hit it and get it, I'm going to cut it off and shut your play down. But if he lifts his eyes like an average AFL or better than average AFL footballer does, he sees Logan McDonald 30 metres goal side of his opponent charging to the goal square. That's an easy play. And that's a play that Brisbane didn't miss all day. So at 450, you get beaten by a decision maker who's not quite grand final standard. Which is a tough thing to say, but it's a strolling goal that just lifts the group again and keeps your nose in front, if not in the game.
The worry for Brisbane was that Charlie and Joe had both had really good looks, and knowing that it's part of their makeup is to miss those early chances was just to worry. Okay, will that infiltrate? But to their credit, they took all of their moments in stride. Charlie played a really good game, mixed with some total horrors. Like, he lived the extremes of it. And if he'd converted his chance, he drops a mark. He misses his first shot. He misses from the goal square in the 3rd quarter. He's laying tackles everywhere. He was really good just without the finishing touches.
He was busy. So that's one side for me is the ball movement challenge. And then there's the inside-out game, which I've talked about all year, but the ability to take the ball from inside to outside. So if you're going to do the review at home, there's a centre bounce at 11.25 odd. Neil to McCluggage to Fletcher. It's bang, bang, bang. And they just have the Swans spectating. They didn't get the opportunity to close space, and it was gone. It was over. And then so the inside to out is all I was looking for. Because if the Swans couldn't beat them here with the big 3 in there, they were gone. And that was always the talk coming in. So at 8:09, when Lachie Neale swoops in and goes whoosh with one hand on the ball, picks it up clean, steps out of trouble, fires a handball, and they are gone.
Yeah.
And you go, wow, that's awesome. So if I'm a Brisbane player, you just lift. That's our man. That's our skipper. 4:41, same thing. Wilmot to Ashcroft to McCluggage. And then McCluggage charges. He just runs. Now, at the contest, his nominal opponent was McInerney. And I'm going to be hard on McInerney today because he's done some things that are defensively disrespectful. He's all rip, tear or bust to try and get a possession, and he gives McCluggage some opportunity. So McCluggage just charges forward. Now, he doesn't know whether he's going to get involved again. And Warner, who's not his direct opponent, but he's 8 metres off. Now, Warner's got all the speed in the world. If he wants to pick up that 8 metres over a 40-metre run, he picks it up. But he doesn't really want to pick it up. Blakey does the head duck thing, no free kick, ball spills out, boom, pops to McCluggage, all over. So they're the little moments or the small decisions that are going to haunt Sydney, but you've got to talk about Brisbane putting that to them, constantly testing and probing, are you up to this? So the inside to outside battle, they were just getting hammered.
Who did you give your votes to in the first quarter?
Oh, this is where it gets interesting.
There were so many good players here. Andrews, Starcevich, Lohman, Berry, Ashcroft, plus the 3 I chose. Where have you gone?
Well, unlucky for me was Ashcroft, Lohman and Archie. I thought Archie was very good as well. I gave McCluggage the 3. I thought he was all damaged, 9 disposals, 4 score involvements. He disrupted the midfield matchups with his charging. I gave the 2 to Andrews. So Andrews last year, so I've got a bit of lag from the previous year. Instead of playing the other player's game, his opponent's game, he played his game. 4 intercepts for the quarter. So this is the package. So he didn't allow Parker to distract him. And the intercept mark at 15.25, there was a spoil at 12.50, and you go, that's our boy. And then I gave 1, it could have been more, to Lockie Neal. He was just clean, and he continuously took the game from inside to out.
Yeah, I gave 3 McCluggage, 2 Neal, and I tossed up Danaher or Andrews. I lent with Danaher. Yeah. I get Andrews in later.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so I've got McCluggage, Neal, Danaher.
Can I just put a little mention there as well? There's Lohman fires a warning shot at 10:40 to Ollie Florent. He chooses to go one side, leaves Lohman go the other, doesn't pay a price. And then the second time he does a similar thing at 8:31. He gets burnt. You don't get too many warning shots in games like this. And then a highlight for me. So on the countdown clock, 48 seconds to go. Brisbane are in chip mode, right? Just taking the 10 metres available. I want you to watch Goulden. So this is what we're talking about, the top liners. Goulden allows Berry to run straight past him. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And this is a guy who's telling the footy world he wants to play 100% of game time because he can run the game out. Well, if you can run the game out, you can put pressure on Berry. He hits Charlie in the pocket, who goals. So whose terms are you playing on? Yours or the team's?
Yep.
This is a theme that continually comes up through the course of the 4 quarters.
6 goals in a 12-minute block, and the bang goals, 16 and 17, 22 and 23, is 1 becomes 2 at the next centre clearance. David King, the second quarter.
Yeah, so why does that happen? And again, we get back to the clearance and contest discussion of inside to out. You know, we've owned this language, inside to out. How do you get the ball from inside to out? Have you got the players that'll break tackles or thread the handball, be super clean? A lot of half fumbles from the Swans in this quarter particularly. But if you want to have a close look at some, so they only won 9 clearances, but they scored from 5 of them.
Yep.
Well, that's an unbelievable return. 3 goals from centre bounce alone. They haven't kicked 3 goals from centre bounce in any quarter for the year. So what a time for that to come to bear. So have a look at some of those moments we're talking about, and they are attitude, and then they are. There's a component of talent in them, but attitude comes to the fore. So at 13:30, Ashcroft v McInerney, again McInerney, and a ball up on the wing. He just hunts harder than McInerney. McInerney drops off, takes the easier run, and Ashcroft gets a footy. At 10:10, inside to out, Fletcher. He takes the physical punishment to get the ball first, to give it off to Andrews backwards. It's only a 10-metre handball, but it's brilliant. And then there's Ashcroft again, brilliant in tight in a centre bounce at about 7:25. But there's a couple of special mentions. Lockie Neal's lightning hands at 4:35 is your classic inside out. Absorbs the heat, draws them in, and that becomes a hipwood goal. At 4:11, it's personal between Neal and Rowbottom, and it's a long battle. It's a long clearance that they're fighting for sort of 4 to 5 seconds, and then he just breaks him, picks the ball up super clean, kicks it short to Morris at the top of the 50, gets to Archie, contested mark on Rampy goal. So they're the little wins that were slowly breaking them. At 1:41, Dunkley makes again the same decision that's my ball. It's a genuine 50-50 between Robbie Fox, who doesn't do a lot wrong, admittedly, but it's a bobbling ball that Dunkley says, no, I'm going flat out at that ball. He beats Fox to it, out to Ainsworth, out to Neil, contested mark for Morris on McCartan inside the 450. So those little moments where the decision had to be made, and is that mine? Is that theirs? I'm just going. They didn't waver, and they were just too much for them at contest.
So the relentless pressure and the repeat entries which just pile up. And keep in mind, the Lions kicked 4 behinds before they kicked their 6th goal. So this is such a sustained period. And the impact that it has is the Blakey kick, where it just blindly out of the back pocket and straight to Berry. Like, it's the one thing as a defender. If that happens in round 3, that's writ large. Hey. No.
That's Blakey.
We can't be doing that.
That's been Blakey the last 6 weeks, hasn't it? So it doesn't shock me that Blakey, he did one in the first quarter where he tried to be half a smart ass with the kick in the corridor, turnover. This one here, when you've got players just 5-6 metres off you, you can pop the handball, which they've done all year because they've been freewheeling and things haven't been, as you say, they haven't been in that cauldron. So you talk about pressure. Their pressure was 213 for the quarter. So they only had 11 quarters for the season where they'd been above 200. And this was one of them. My God. So what a time to bring pressure and then handle the heat, to steal Ken's term, and get the ball from inside to out. That's the gap in the game. I mean, we can talk about everything else. You can go around in circles, but the Brisbane hands in the end were so clean, and the mindset was that any time was a spilt ball, it was their ball. It was awesome to watch. They didn't handle it. Like, there's some things that the Blakey one you talked about, that was at 5:25. So at 9:38, McCartan's got Danaher, right? He's on him. He's actually standing next to him, and the ball's coming down the field, and for some reason he just wanders off him to a pack that he's never going to get to. I've never seen McCartan do it.
Yep.
He's a diligent professional in terms of his defensive actions. Leaves Joe all alone. He marks the ball inside 50, and you go, what are they rattled? What's happening here, you know? And then there's... In that sort of sequence, there's Brodie Grundy's 5 seconds of just chaos, just sub-AFL stuff, 2 to 3 really poor efforts. The goal goes back to the middle, and then Danaher mishandles Grundy again. The quick kick comes forward, Archie marks it because Blakey's not quite there. So all these things are coming home to roost. And it'll be a tough review for Brodie Grundy, this one. This was a game he should have destroyed. And now he's getting beaten in the ruck. They've just kicked 3 goals from centre bounce clearance. Wow. So this would be an awful review. And again, the Swans were still blastish. Everything was blast. And that just wasn't them. So full credit to Brisbane for putting them into this flat spin. But it was just the gap in the game, their ability to stay composed when the heat was on.
And we got to 11 inside 50 marks to 1, and 8 of them in the quarter. Like that's phenomenal. Again, in any regular season game, that it's leaping off the page. But for it to happen in a grand final like that,
yeah. But I think when you can take the ball out of contest so quickly and give your kicker the ability to take the extra 2 to 3 steps, a bit more time, a bit less pressure, and at least kick to the favoured side of the forward. That's all they need, these guys, is just a metre to the favoured side, and you draw a free kick at worst. And that's, it was just perfect. It was a perfect football for Brisbane because we talked about the scoring power of both teams, really. Both teams, we touched on this about round 13, I reckon. Scoring in bursts. Who can do it?
That's it.
Who can do it? We talked about Sydney. I think Sydney were able to kick 6 goals in 10 minutes in about round 12 or 13.
It was the Geelong game.
There you go. And we said, who can do this? Because this is going to be a factor in either winning the game, getting back into the game, or separating the game. And Brisbane clearly come to the party.
All right, so the votes here.
Well, the 3 I gave to Ashcroft, 9 disposals, 7 of those in the forward half, 3 scoring involvements, just involved in everything. 2 to Neil. I thought he's really smart to sweep into the defensive half early. Got a lot of ball down back early in the term, and then helped them work the ball out. They didn't know what to do. Sydney, do they go with him? Do they hold off him? Are they zoning? So he had 9 disposals as well, but he had three big clearances, and they were big clearances. And I gave Lohman 1. I just thought his sheer creativity, he was involved in a lot of forward half opportunities, 3-score involvements. Dunkley was stiff to miss out. Danaher crashing packs everywhere. And Archie, for some reason, I've managed to leave Archie out. I'm not proud of it. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I've got honourable mentions, Archie, Morris and
You
Lohmann.
left him out as well?
Yeah, I did. So I was 1, Ashcroft. This is where we get the real taste of what is about to happen. 2, Danaher. I think he's profound in this quarter, not least of which he kicks the goal to stop the sequence of behinds, and then he goes and wins that centre clearance. And I thought this was Neil's quarter.
Yeah.
The 3 bounce run, all the work you've mentioned, the 3 bounce run, I'm going, who are we seeing here? He's taken 6 years of his age in one. I thought he was phenomenal in the second quarter. Bit I loved most about this King is this is a team who all year have grappled with teamsmanship. They've wanted to be less selfish and to be more sharing. And the Big O evidently came up with the mantra, give yourself over to the team. This was the quarter where it all happened. All the foibles of the past, they set right. Everything that was to be shared was shared. They celebrated collectively. I really loved this, watching it back. On the day, you're always feeling that, the game's over too soon. I really enjoyed watching this quarterback yesterday.
Because in the back of your mind, you've just got that, what happens in the first 10 minutes of the third? Like, we'd seen Brisbane do it a fortnight earlier, and you just thought, it wouldn't surprise in 2024, the year we've had, that something stupid could happen in a grand final. Like, it wasn't likely to happen, but you just didn't know. So you had to see them stamp it. And even hearing Lockie talk with Abby on the way off the ground, and say, no, this is far from done. Let's not talk about the margin. We know this. We've been here before. We've got this wrong in the past. You could just imagine what was said in the rooms. It's 0-0. We start again here. So what they did do is they maintained that clearance and contest inside the out game. I want people to go and watch it again and get involved. So Neil again at 17.50, he dispossesses Rowbottom in a tackle, springs up. There'd be 10 players around him, and says, "That's my ball," and bang, picks it up, step, he's gone. Steps out, kicks long, Charlie gets a free kick, top of the goal square. But all the work's done by the arcing run out of the stoppage. And it's just awesome to watch this guy in full flight like this. And I hear that he's impacted and injured, and I see him hobbling around after the game and since. But in game, to put it all to the side was unreal. And McCluggage to Neil.
That was a big one, McCluggage to Neil.
Yeah, 13.50
over the head.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was that was just ridiculous. That was the Joe Mark. So
the one-on-one against McCartan.
That's it.
Which had defined his final series, hadn't it? As Joe had those big moments against the best defenders in the comp, and he beat them cold repeatedly.
Yeah, he absolutely did. So there was a lot to really enjoy about this. The forward 50 stoppage goal from Ashcroft, where Goulden just refused to go with him, refused to defend.
It's bad, isn't it?
It's bad. That's at 9.28, and that's one that I think that John Longmire will show during the off-season for sure. It just is disheartening for the group to watch that. And I didn't touch on it before, but there's a Goulden moment on Lohmann that was really disrespectful as well at the end of one of the earlier quarters, but I'll get to that. But I thought the ball movement of the Swans was just shut down. I mean, they had 10 opportunities to bring the ball out of the defensive half, and they just couldn't get through. Starcevic, Zorko, Lester, Payne, they were all fantastic,
So it gets to 19-7 intercept marks during this quarter.
Yeah.
As Starcevic and Payne are repelling everything.
Yeah, so we talk too often, we're watching the same thing. So they take 20 intercept marks for the game. So in the last 6 years of footy, so what's that, 150-odd games, they've only bettered that 13 times. So these are all bests in a grand final.
Yeah.
So put it into context. Well, there's a lot of Brumbies in those games. So this is just awesome. Their stoppage work again, so that they score for 4 times from 8-1 clearances. The Swans win 9 and don't score at all for any of this. So the gaps in the game, they're not just opening up; they're opened up. It's gone. And now it's over. And now the realisation to the Swans players that the season is just a waste is hitting home. And that, I think, now is that moment where you go, the margin. Who cares?
Yes, that's right. at this stage it could have been anything. All right, who did you want to give the third quarter votes to?
I thought Leicester was terrific. Zorko was great, and Archie, I'm just leaving him out everywhere, Gerard.
Yep.
I don't know why. There's no real logic to leaving him out. He's just a bit stiff. Ashcroft, 7 disposals. I thought the brilliant stoppage goal. He had a couple of other clearances and 3 score involvements. He's involved in most of the offensive stuff. So 3 for me. 2 to Neil. Again, 4 score involvements from 8 touches. Just ridiculous. And the standard setting was just terrific. And I've given Starcevic 1.
Yep.
So he's keeping Papley quiet. Papley has just the 1 kick. He has 3 intercepts for the quarter, and he was part of that wall that, you know, if you could split a vote between the backline guys, you would, but we'll give it to Starcevic.
He was my honourable mention in the quarter, Starcevic.
Yeah.
So I went 3 Ashcroft. This is the quarter where he got hold of it, and the signature moment. You want to have a signature moment, don't you? I had 2 Danaher still. I still think he's such an influential figure in everything that he does. Every time he comes up to the ball, every time the ball is directed his way up forward, and 1 to Neil, who just keeps building his day's work through the third quarter. So the last quarter, I felt like the last quarter, Kingy offered the chance to fully appreciate Harris Andrews, and exactly what you identified earlier on, marginalised for too long last year, stayed at the very centre of the game all the way through, so appreciate that. Heaney goes off with the stress fracture in the leg, so that's a Wilmot run-down tackle in the first quarter that comes its full way through, and it just had the right highlight to finish. Joe Danaher had somehow become the story, the enigma that he is, and it had that last moment for the Lions' journey.
Unless you like Luke Parker, don't watch the last quarter.
Yes, yeah.
Just fast forward to the last sort of 2 minutes when the boys were clearly enjoying themselves. Just a lot of uncontested marks, chip, 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 and that's how it was always going to be. Game's over. You got a lot of celebrating to do. You don't want to bang yourself up for that, Gerard, and just enjoy it. I mean, these players would have known exactly what was likely to happen in a moment's time. You know, how could you expect them to continue to play the way they had the first 3 quarters? The job was done. It was so good. I'm proud of Luke Parker, and I just want to put this out there because to play the game, it's still important to these competitors on the other side who haven't had the day they wanted, for a couple of particularly the senior core players to play the game out. 2 big goals from 50, and then he splits a pair of Lions defenders and comes back in for his third in flow as that ball was munged inside forward 50. So I was rapt for him to at least finish the game strong, but really the quarter was a bit of a non-event. It was Neil and Ashcroft again who set up the Danaher goal. So they're just involved in everything. And we spent the week talking about the big 3 of the Swans, and we walk away talking about the pairing of the Lions. It's pretty simple, wasn't it? There's not a lot else to discuss for the quarter. Lohman's announced himself as a potential top liner of the game, really, at this early age in the forward half of the ground. Just a spark player that can do a bit of everything. Can take a big contested mark. He can crumb. He can snap. He can excite. But play footy in the right way. Yeah, there's a goal at the start of the game. We're just going to try and find exactly where it was. But there was a goal that he set up. Actually, he kicked the goal. He kicked the goal.
So I think he could have given it to Ashcroft, but he kicked it himself.
It was in the second quarter. I want you to go back and I know we're talking about the fourth quarter, but I want you to go back and watch the second quarter, Gerard. It's probably the most disrespectful play for the game from Errol Goulden. If you pause it at the 15-minute mark, there's a handover between Goulden and Rampy. They've got 2 pairs basically coming to the wing together. And he had Lohman, and he didn't even bother to chase at all. In the centre wing, members' side, right in front of the benches, he just let him go. And Rampy had to defend 2 players for the duration of that play, and Lohman slots the goal. Now, that to me, credit to Lohman. That's what I want to get back and just talk about Lohman. Lohman puts himself in these positions. Love those players who do that. So I was rapt to see him finish the way he did and hit the scoreboard as regularly as he did. But he capped the game off, as you said, with that contested mark, 7 minutes to go in the last quarter. But there's just too many. There's just not enough from Sydney across the course of the day to keep them invested in this last quarter.
And what are we to make of Heaney at the end of it, playing with a stress reaction through the finals? He'd been best on ground twice in a row and exacerbated in the rundown tackle in the first quarter. And Sammy Edmund down on the bench was telling us about it during the flow of the game, lots of conversations with the doctors, and by the end, just nothing he was able to do about it.
Yeah, and we can't judge players that are, in terms of you can't. elevate their performance because of injury. You're just out there. You put your name up and you've crossed that line. You're there for assessment. It's a risk they probably obviously have to take with him. Do you have to take that same risk with McDonald? I'm not sure. But these are the decisions that haunt. It's an easy one with Heaney. McDonald, not so much.
What did you want to do with the votes in the fourth quarter, which maybe don't carry the gravitas of earlier on?
No, they don't. But look, I've given Parker the 3 in this quarter. 3 goals in the quarters in a grand final is fantastic, and I think it just enhances his reputation for his next opportunity, probably at the Kangaroos, which is terrific. 2 to Neil. He won 4 of their 23. They had 23 contested possessions for the quarter, Jared. To say they didn't want to get banged up. Yeah. So 2 of those were clearances. And Andrew, as you mentioned, 3 intercepts. He totally controlled the game behind the ball, and his organisation and influence was there all day.
I felt like I should have put McCluggage in here. I thought he had a great last quarter, but I needed a little bit of squaring up to happen. So 3 to Parker, the same as he kicked 3 goals. I went 2 to Andrews, who probably that's the accumulation of the bit, and 1 to Lohman, who was due votes, and he still had all those lovely moments in the last quarter and not just the flashy stuff either. So that's where I landed. We'll put it all together. Next, instead of seedings, our final voting from the grand final and where we would have awarded the Norm Smith. Quarter-by-quarter voting from the grand final. How has it shaken out, David King?
Well, different to what it would have been if you'd just gone 3-2-1, I reckon. So I've ended up with Neil as the Norm Smith medalist on 7, Ashcroft on 6, and then split the 3 with McCluggage, Parker and Andrews. So it's not what I would have done had I gone 3-2-1.
Yes, yep. Which is the beauty of doing it this way. Oh, no, I ended up with Neil on 6 votes. I had Danaher on 5 and Ashcroft on 4, and that's the way I would have voted 3-2-1.
Yeah, I was hard on Danaher for some reason. Just the others were a fraction better, and it's clearly hard on Archie.
Yeah, so Archie and Lohman are right at the edges. It's just whether you think they're in the best 3 players on the ground. And Starcevic is the other one you want to honourable mention.
Had I gone 3-2-1, if we're just writing down at the end of game, I would have gone Neil, Ashcroft, Starcevic. What would your 3-2-1 have been?
I would have been Neil, Danaher, Ashcroft. Yeah. It actually marries up for me, but...
I knew yours would marry up. I don't know why I asked you.
Kingy, great year of the means test. A big thank you.
A lot of fun, Jared. A lot of feedback. No, it's good. We love doing it. It doesn't always work out the way we say, and sometimes it does, but it's just talking footy, and it's just great on a Monday.
Yeah, it's great to tap your analytical mind every stage of the season.